We've heard of the heroes of the world, soldiers and statesmen who changed the course of history. You know their names. But there are unsung heroes too. Ordinary people who did extraordinary things. Their deeds may be unknown, their faces forgotten, but their courage is timeless. This is one such story. This is the man who saved the world and no one knew his name. October 27th, 1962. The world is teetering on the edge of nuclear war. The United States has just detected a Soviet submarine, B-59, lurking in the waters near Cuba. The Americans don't know that this submarine is armed with a nuclear torpedo. And worse, they don't know the crew inside has lost contact with Moscow for days. Above the water, U.S. destroyers begin dropping warning depth charges, small explosives meant to signal the submarine to surface. But to the men inside B-59, it feels like war has already begun. The heat is unbearable. Carbon dioxide levels are rising. The captain believes the war has started. He wants to launch the nuclear torpedo aimed straight at the American fleet. One launch, and World War III is real. Mushroom clouds over cities, millions dead in hours. The captain is furious. He demands permission to fire. According to Soviet protocol, 3 men must agree to authorize a nuclear strike. The captain agrees. The political officer agrees. That leaves one man, Vasily Arkhipov, second in command. Cool-headed, rational, quiet, but he says no. He demands they surface instead, make contact, wait for orders. He stands between panic and apocalypse. In that instant, one man, unknown to the world, decides the fate of millions. He refuses to authorize the launch. The torpedo remains inside its tube. The submarine rises to the surface. Above them, the Americans never realize how close they were to annihilation. No bombs were dropped. No missiles were fired. Because one man said no. Vasily Arkhipov returned home to silence. No medals, no headlines. Just another officer in the Soviet Navy. He died in 1998. Decades later, historians would uncover his story. And the truth came out. Without Arkhipov, the Cuban Missile Crisis could have ended in nuclear devastation. A man who disobeyed an order to save humanity. Not with weapons, not with speeches, but with a decision. In a submarine, beneath the ocean, in the darkest hour of the Cold War, he saved the world. When we think of the Cuban Missile Crisis, these are the faces that come to mind. Men who led their nations to the brink of nuclear war. But what if I told you the story of someone whose name is not John F. Kennedy, not Nikita Khrushchev, but Vasily Arkhipov? Someone whose story was hidden for decades, buried under layers of propaganda and the Cold War. When we talk about the Cuban Missile Crisis today, we tend to focus on the big picture, the confrontation between superpowers, the threat of mutually assured destruction. But what about the small stories? What about the men in the trenches, the officers in the submarines, the soldiers on the ground? Their stories are equally important. They remind us that in the grand chessboard of geopolitics, there are human beings, people with names, faces, and most importantly, a will to survive. This is Vasily Arkhipov, a Soviet naval officer who found himself in the most terrifying situation imaginable: a nuclear submarine with a nuclear torpedo cut off from the outside world, with a captain willing to launch it at any moment. Talk about pressure. Most of us have probably never been in such a situation. And thankfully, we don't live in times of a Cold War where such situations could lead to global annihilation. But even so, we can learn a lot from Archipov's story. It tells us about the dangers of unchecked power, the importance of clear communication, and above all, the value of a single life. It's easy to forget that behind every major event in history, there are countless individual stories. Stories of courage, fear, hope, and despair. And Vasily Arkhipov's story is one of the most remarkable of them all. So let's take a moment to remember him, not just as a footnote in the history books, but as a human being who dared to say no to madness and yes to humanity. Thank you for watching.